what is the most underrated thing we are observing today? And I was speaking to one of the most prominent analysts, and we agreed on this conclusion. But before I share the conclusion, I want to ask that question to you. What do you feel is the most underrated thing we are observing in the last 5 days around AI?
I was planning to think about it over the weekend. So, there's so much that
I think that's the connectivity requirement for AI.
You know, the conclusion we all came to? The conclusion we all came to is even the most outrageous projections and anticipations we are building around AI, they are underrated. So that is where we are. This is a hype of AI. This is a hype of agentic AI. And it's essential that we ground this conversation into something which is scalable for the business and the ecosystem. So welcome, Pascal.
Thank you, Saksham.
A brief introduction from you.
So I'm Pascal Menezes. We build a lot of assets around automations and other areas I'll talk about. And now we've put all that packaging around network as a service. And that means elastic, programmable, and automated fabric of a network. So the network can be like cloud-like in agility and so on. And we have a NAS for Business Suite, which covers APIs and all the transports and so on. But now we also have a NAS for AI Suite, which will cover more details around how will connectivity play in this. I think someone talked about connectivity, how agents will play, automation, and so on. So my background's 40 plus years in the industry. So I'm an old timer, but still enjoying in my time.
Perfect, Pascal. Pleasure to have you here. And think about ecosystems. If you go in the past decade, it was all about building ecosystems around APIs and platforms. And now suddenly we are coming into a decade where we have autonomous agents taking actions, decisions, and talking to each other directly. How does that shift our understanding of our ecosystem play from an API-centric ecosystem to a human-centric ecosystem to an autonomous-centric ecosystem? How do you see these shifts going?
So it's actually a very good question. So first of all, the fundamental principle is there'll be billions of agents of all sorts for all kinds of use cases. Kids will be building agents. I know I've been building agents on Vibe platforms, and you'll see them in all kinds of mobile phones and headsets and VRs, and their agents can be everywhere. And the good news is we can be creative to build agents. There'll be consumer agents and there'll be enterprise agents. So first thing is agents, and they will swarm together. They will work together. They'll reason and work together just like human beings. So I think that's number one. And how that will play out is there'll be agents for the telco market that will be specifically to the telco markets, and agents that will be built for general use cases and scenarios for different, like smart cities and smart factories and commercials and social media and so on. So that's what I say.
Perfect. That leads me to thinking about another three waves we have seen in our industry. The first wave was essentially, if you cut it down to the bare minimum, it was connecting people through internet, right? The second wave was connecting applications through APIs. Now we are in the third wave. How do you think in this wave where we have humans conceding a little more control towards machines and agents, how do you see trust playing a role?
So very good question. So when we did the NAS for Business Suite, we also did, and this was very intentional, we did carrier Ethernet, we did IP, we did wavelengths to transport stuff. That was kind of our bread and butter, our heritage. But we also went up the stack and we did SD-WAN, and we certified all the top SD-WAN vendors. We went up further to SASE with SSE, SASE Zero Trust, and certified all the top vendors there too. And then we did cloud on-ramps for multi-cloud. And we call that our NAS for Business Suite. Now, luckily, we did that because now we're seeing cybersecurity for AI become very critical. So you cannot have agents and models just roaming around doing what they want. There's got to be guardrails. There has to be firewalls. There has to be policies. So here's the way I see it. Number one is agents have to have credentials, just like we have credentials, and we have to be trusted with passports and so on. So there has to be a trust factor of an agent with some kind of credential trusted by some identity provider that will be federated in some way, because we all don't use one identity provider. And I think eventually it'll be decentralized. So that's first thing. Then from that, we have to describe what are the policies of that agent. And agents have to have policies. What can they do, what they can do, and so on. What can they interact with, what time of day, context, so on. And then finally, there is fingerprinting. What are the agents, when they do things, they are fingerprinted all the time as they're moving around doing things. And then there's an audit trail that provides all the things they've done. And sometimes there'll be in the policy that a human has to get involved. If an order is placed, a human has to look at that. Okay. So this is all coming in place. Now, ironically, all of the cybersecurity vendors, which I talk to all the time, are our technology advisory board, has said they are all providing all of this and through their platforms with obviously zero trust, which is where they come from with SASE. So zero trust plays a very important role, and they're providing all of these capabilities. But they're not going to be an identity provider, so they hook into identity providers. So I think what you'll see is, a long story short, you'll have AI for cybersecurity. So our NAS suite will have, transport for AI, which is connectivity for AI. We have SD-WAN for AI. We have cybersecurity for AI, and then we have basically the sovereign AI, which we won't get into. But so at the end of the day, this cybersecurity for AI is about securing agents, having the policy paradigm, having the ability to audit. It also has firewalls in place. It also has to classify AI traffic to know different types of AI traffic. And it has to prevent data loss prevention or data loss. So it has to have DLP functions in it. So every product I'm talking to is now moving into the realm of securing AI. Before we're securing regular business workloads, and now we're securing AI. And so all of our vendors have been certified for the business workloads, and now we're going to be launching a cybersecurity for AI certification coming out in our portfolio of NAS for AI.
Super. You touched upon some very critical points. Cyber agents leaving the observability trail. And, for permissioned industries and very mission critical industries like telcos, that it even becomes more important than ever, right? A gap into a agent autonomously executing a operation which was not supposed to do can lead to a collapse of a business. So how do you think standards play a role in ensuring that edge case black swan events don't happen?
So we are standardizing and certifying in the business workloads of SASE, which we've already launched, and we have all the top vendors on SASE already certified. We will be doing exactly these kind of things. We will have to look at models themselves could have malware embedded in them when we don't know until you hit the right prompt. And so there's no regulations right now on the models. There's no regulations on agents. And so there has to be guardrails. And so we will be providing through our ecosystem of cybersecurity vendors, we will provide a certification that will actually validate the best we can, besides zero-day attacks, the best we can about how well that AI infrastructure is secure, right? And what we haven't touched about is the AI infrastructure. I know one of the questions is, what's the top thing? And I can tell you that the internet is not going to be enough for the AI era. And so we are going to see network as a service fabrics, both for training and inference. And they're going to be purpose-built AI fabrics through AI exchanges where providers can interconnect to create this global fabric. And that global fabric will have the support of inference, which will probably be IP, SD-WAN, carry Ethernet. We have also carry Ethernet over broadband and IP and so on. And then training will be wavelengths and carry Ethernet, depending on the models and how much bandwidth. So I think all of this is all going to come together, and cybersecurity is going to be the layer on top, that you cannot operate an AI infrastructure without the cybersecurity part of that. And we're seeing that from all our vendors saying the same thing. Obviously, they want to say the same thing, but I don't think the internet today is so flawed, full of malware and threats, that we cannot have the AI infrastructure the same way.
True. And let me build up on that. What do you think because you speak to almost all operators? Are they seeing themselves in the AI era as a connectivity? Or they are going beyond? Are they kind of going to offer their network intelligence to customers and businesses? How is the B2B market shaping up? What are operators thinking and positioning and evaluating their options in an AI agentic era?
Very good question. I'll tell you something. Operators, so we're an association. We have 200 plus members made up of GSIs, as Wipro, mainly service providers, the top tier ones around the world, 130 plus. All the technology vendors, including cybersecurity, switching, routing, wavelengths, DWDMs, and so on. Enterprise leadership, we have an enterprise council too. And I can tell you that the thing that is very concerning is that in this AI era, what's going to have to happen is not only do we have to bring this all together and run it in a global fabric, right? But we also, as I said, we have to secure it, right? And this evolution of, okay, so I provide the transport, I provide the cybersecurity through my offerings, but what else can I do? Well, the edges is where inference is going to happen.
True.
Far end, near end. The European government has funded $1 billion to build the sovereign edge cloud, right? This is very innovative. And if you look at our strategy, I've been talking about sovereign AI through our board, and we've actually voted on going towards that. And we are showing GPU as a service, model as a service. So the edges of the telcos, which are not generating any revenue, will now generate revenue for either CPU workloads, business workloads, AI workloads with GPUs, and potentially there are 20, 40,000 ISVs have taken models, finely tuned it for specific use cases that are looking for platforms to put their models on. And this is an opportunity for the telcos to monetize their edges in a long-winded way.
And do you see the whole ecosystem coming together to envisage a marketplace around agentic, like they have created a marketplace around APIs with Aduna? And do you see a shift or pivot towards an agentic marketplace?
I think the marketplace, let's break down the agentic marketplace. There's the agentic marketplace for consumer, which we'll get from the app stores. There's the agentic marketplace we'll get from the marketplace we're getting from today, which is the hyperscalers and so on, and the Dunas and all that, which are tied to the marketplaces of hyperscalers. But there's also going to be a marketplace that we're putting up in what we call our federation, where you can build your own ecosystem that basically you can find companies, vendors, providers, GSIs that are using our assets, are certified, are using our standards, our APIs, our agents, because we're building agent blueprints to build agents. We've already moved all our APIs to MCP, which is the way how AI will communicate. And then that marketplace, which we're building, allows everybody to build their own ecosystem to what they want to do. So I think there's going to be levels of marketplaces and agents. So we, for example, are building an agent blueprint so that anybody wants to implement an agent for quoting, ordering, so specifically to buy day zero, day end stuff, to buy, quote, order, provision, test, performance fault, trouble ticketing, billing, all of that day zero end. Those agents are purpose-built agents to work against the telecom operator as a buyer or a seller. That will be in a marketplace that people can get and say, oh, okay, they can do a ordering API and so on. So the long-winded answer is there's going to be different marketplaces. We ourselves will create a marketplace in what we call our federation to allow our members to say, build your ecosystem. Here are the different companies, providers that can do these things, and go pick what you want and go build your own ecosystem. I think when this geopolitical world where we live in, there's not going to be one federation. There will be a set of ecosystems that will be purpose-built by different providers and vendors and so on. And that's just the way I think it's going to flourish.
Indeed, MCPs is an important building block because now we have agents orchestrating and commissioning services by themselves instead of a human taking a call to trigger them, right? And that protocol enables that follow through as well as observability of what actions are happening and how to kind of orchestrate a safe system around that, right? That also leads me to my next question. We are living in the world of conversations around models. We have foundation models, we have reasoning models, we have embodied AI models. Now, the conversation so far is one model versus the other. How can organizations play a role in creating interoperability amongst models, whether it's open source or a closed source, whether it's on-prem, on edge, or on the cloud? How do you create that ecosystem of interoperability? Because then intelligence is a commodity then.
Yeah, so I think it's a very good question. So there's these foundational frontier models that everybody's driving to, but I think from there, we're seeing taking pieces off for being finely tuned, purpose-built models, which we're already seeing, which is basically saying, how can we take a finely tuned model for telco industry that understand telco language? Because if you run some things through foundational models, it doesn't quite understand the telco language. So they're building that. And they're allowing telcos to say, you can share your data in that telco model. And, so provider one will have a telco model, and then provider two will have a telco model, same model, telco three, but they'll all supply their own data, telemetry data, all the data will feed that model. But they won't share the data across, but the model will evolve. And the model will evolve by sharing the weights, right? And so I think this is a frontier, a new area of how can we evolve a model without sharing the data. That is a very powerful idea.
If you see, we are entering an era of uncharted events, right? We have a very stable core of telcos, operators running their operations. Then we have all these agentic systems now, which we can think, reason, and do powerful stuff. And the two worlds are kind of colliding against each other, and there's no way we can stop them, or we want to stop them. This is a bus which has left the station. In this era, what will success look like?
My view and the vision I always think about is in an AI era, we have to get away from how the internet was built. Now, the internet, I was there before the internet was built. I mean, it might not look that old, just Gen X, but I was there in like 1970s, and when the first router came out, and so on, building IP everywhere. I was involved in that, and it was a very cool area. But we didn't know what we didn't know. And over, decades, we now realize the internet did amazing innovations, but it also is riddled full of security issues, right? So to me, what success looks like is how can we build an AI era where we can trust these agents, and there'll be agents, billions of agents, people baking agents, app store agents, all that. And how will that all come together in a world that the impact for humans, where I use AI all the time, can be trusted, used, and the operators play a very critical role. And today, the operators have been very slow. Like we cannot have the operators. No operator owns the whole global footprint. They own parts of the footprint of the world, but they have to work together now, and they have to be at cloud-like speeds. There's no way I can turn up something from here to there and take 6 months. That's not acceptable. And agents need, and models, and now we haven't talked peripherals. You're gonna have video cameras and IoT devices that'll be talking to models,
True.
right? So you have peripherals, you have AI agents, you have sites, you have, everything talking to each other in an AI era, AI world ecosystem. And they have to work as if like the internet, it just happens. But instead, it's not the internet, it's a purpose-built network. So I'm stitching together through automation this inference part that connects me to a camera, that's connecting to a model, that model is connected to some cloud to doing other processing. And that stitching is happening through automation in real time. So unlike the internet where you just throw a packet in and packet comes out, this AI infrastructure is purpose-built, and it has quality in it, deterministic properties, availability, and it has security in it. And that is something very different than the internet. So that's how I see it. That's how I see impact looks like.
Perfect. Perfect. This has been a power-packed session, Pascal, looking at future and seeing how the ecosystem is shaping. Thank you so much for that. Let's open up for one or two questions.
So I actually have two questions. We've been talking about the ecosystem where the AI is kind of enabling the entire persona across industries, right? So it's an abstract question. So what, according to you, you feel that there is a specific persona within the ecosystem that AI cannot replace?
Yeah, I'm very concerned when quantum computers come out. You know, we haven't got the AGI yet, and when we go to ASI, that's going to be, I don't know, I'll probably be gone, but I'll be concerned my grandchildren. I think quantum computers are going to change the game radically, you know, because quantum computers can do parallel processing just by superposition and entanglement that we can't do it, you know, in today's classical computers. So I think what models will train itself, as we're seeing today, at rapid iterations in a quantum hardware, which human beings don't have that capacity in hardware. And I think we're going to see a very radical world in 50 years. So I think physical AI is just starting.
Yes.
And physical AI, we will then, and I think we had a good discussion about this,
Yeah.
right? Because you talked about, hey, I want a driver, I can get one and order it, and they're pretty inexpensive. But I know in US it's the opposite, it's very expensive because the labor is not cheap. But you said, well, that's okay because we're going to replace everything by just physical AI,
Yeah.
right? And that was a brilliant idea. And I thought, that's smart. So I think physical AI is going to be the next realm. And we're already seeing Musk and we talk about it.
That's my surname.
Yeah.
But to add to that, right? When quantum marries agentic, maybe we will all upload our memories and our agents will talk to each other, do this panel few years down the line, and we'll watch from a sofa or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what our roles are going to be as human beings, but hopefully we'll have one.
So yeah, I mean, while we are talking about the future, and you know, it's always good to be looking forward. But I want to take some clues from some of the points. I mean, I spent 25 years in the telco industry, and don't get me wrong, but I feel a bit offended when say telcos are slow, because we live in a very regulated world, and if the networks go down, the ambulances don't work, people may die. So it's a very very severe thing. But I wanted to. So when you talked about standardization of the NAS and all, I mean, is there any standards which I mean, I need to still. So you have to please excuse me. I have to go and really go through your platform and all, because this is something a very important thing. We are working on the camera APIs, but it's still a very API. It is not. It is at a system level. It is not at an agentic level. But is that something you can give some light? So that is one question I have to follow up also.
So we're going after communication quality,
Mm.
where fixed and mobile networks work together. So a developer or an agent
Mm.
doesn't think about a network as wireless or wired. It's just a network.
Yeah.
So we're showing connected vehicles and drones, calling a camera API for the wireless with orange,
Mm.
and calling our NAS API for the wired side, Colt.
Okay.
And end to end, they've got a communication quality, and they do showing telematics over their updates or things like that. You pick what kind of profile you want, and automatically the agents provisions everything
Okay.
and then monitors it. So if it doesn't working right, it'll come back to the users and say, it needs more of this, hit the button here for this pricing, and that's it.
We'll be very interested in that, because I think this whole agent, and we have our own thing, and this is where it is, right? I mean, how can we do something, because this collaboration, especially across this middle powers that was coined, yeah, is needed, yeah. And I think this is a very very important, especially communication being a critical infrastructure. So not to take too much of time, the second aspect of it, right, you also touched upon a very important thing, the whole sovereignty part of it. And yeah, I mean, EU had released a sort of an RFP last year. There are around more than 100 plus, and all the telcos, major ones, are there. But the thing, and don't you think that because telcos operate in a very regulated, very secured, very pessimistic way, okay, is that not an advantage for them, that because that they by nature, yeah, they may not have the controls in there yet, but by nature they look glass is half empty. Yeah, especially in the geopolitical situation that we are in. Isn't that an advantage? Yeah, though the pace is slow, I agree with you. Yeah.
Look, telcos have done a phenomenal job of scale and reliability. Okay, so enterprises trust that. They can trust their infrastructure, their critical, mission critical ambulances and hospitals and things. I mean, they've done, diverse routing and fiber and all that. So they know how to scale to millions and millions, where I think over the top operators don't have that luxury. The challenge with the telcos is they didn't come from a software background. When you come from a software background, you have a different mindset than a hardware mindset. So the world's gone software. Like it's everything's software now, right? As we're seeing. And so the telcos are struggling of how to take the thousands of legacy systems that are disparate and make it one. And not, what I mean by they slow is in this world, you gotta turn on things fast. You gotta be able to provide observability.
Yeah.
Customers expect it. It's how the clouds operate. And they also have to expect that you should have a global footprint. They see the hyperscalers having a global footprint. They don't understand why the telcos don't have it. And they can by syndicating, federating, they can, but they have to automate that system. They can't say, oh, I could turn it up in 6 months, or let me tell you a sales guy. And I can tell you, I have talked to so many operators that have not automated yet. And so we're all working together to solve this problem, or I would say this challenge of how to make telcos very, very speedy, very relevant in a world that the agentic, the AI world demands. And I think our operators are stepping up to that, but we're trying to give them, help them with the assets. And I think every standard body is trying to do that.
Yeah.
Sorry, last question. So, what is your advice to the developer community like me, where we've been encompassed with the kind of regulations and the cybersecurity and the Zscaler of the world? It actually comes between our innovation and kind of going free boundary and trying to help the AI world and try to bring in innovations. So how do you think we need to have a mindset towards that? What's your advice?
I came from the era where everything was proprietary. So when I came from Wi-Fi, and I use this analogy, when the first Wi-Fi came out, everybody had their own NICs and their APs, and there was no standard, right? It's only when we standardized and then had the Wi-Fi Alliance and created interoperability, you don't even think about it. It just works no matter what device. And they have all these evolutions of Wi-Fi 5, 6, 7. They have WWM, wireless multimedia. So you can do classes of services on Wi-Fi. There's so many mobility on Wi-Fi. There's so many things that Wi-Fi has innovated because there was a standard that allow everybody to plug and play. If we do not have, that's the only reason standard should exist. It should provide a seamless, frictionless experience that everybody abides to, and then everybody puts their own stuff on top, their own features and everything, right? And we see this in Bluetooth, we see this in HDMI, we see this in Wi-Fi, we see this in every industry. We got that the telecom industry has to go there. Otherwise, we cannot do this bespoke thing and think that, we're competing. We're not competing. We are competing, but yet we're cooperating. And if we're going to have a frictionless environment for the AI era, for everybody else, the fabric of the AI infrastructure has to look like one.
Competing yet cooperating. That's a brilliant way to put how do you shape and nurture an ecosystem with so many players around. Thank you so much, Pascal. Thank you.